Well, welcome to the Sowing Seeds Canada social media during National Volunteer Week. My name is Jody, and I'm joined today by one of our volunteers, Heather. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you.
Yay. Well, and happy Volunteer Week. First of all, let me thank you for your incredible volunteer hours and dedication to Sowing Seeds Canada.
Thank you. I think it's one of the things that's important for people to know, Jody, is that there are all sorts of volunteer roles at Sowing Seeds, and we would welcome new volunteers.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not just people who sow. There's a whole range of activities that someone could get involved in.
Yeah, I love that. Now, how long have you been volunteering with Sowing Seeds?
You know, I've lost track, but it's at least a decade, might even be more.
And how did you come into learning about them and volunteering?
My well, I hold Jean Hunt responsible, another volunteer. Jean worked for my father in a ski shop. My dad owned ski shops, and the ski shops carried Sun-Ice clothing. So I was introduced to the Rempel family through the ski business. And then when I retired, Jean said, "I've got something that you should get involved in." And she was still in touch with the Rempel family and knew that at one time I was a sower. So she brought me into the fold and she hasn't let me go.
And then blink and a decade goes by, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I think you're most noted for those who are familiar with the charity. They probably have met you or seen you in different videos. But for some people who are brand new to learning about what Sowing Seeds does, is you are one of our sowing teachers. And you recently got to go to Uganda, and you and the fellow other volunteers that we're going to hear from this week got to basically teach the course without Sylvia being there. And so it was kind of taking over and doing the next level of sewing. And how incredible has the experience been for you to not only go from, maybe starting out to volunteer a couple of times here and there to being a leader on a trip overseas?
Well, Sylvia, being Sylvia, introduced us to this gradually. We went with her to Guatemala and were able to observe her teaching. And then we went to Guatemala and taught in the next room. And then we graduated to being in Nakringo all on our own in Uganda. And that was, I'm so touched by her leap of faith, for starters, because this is something when you've been the originator and designer and creator of something, to let that go into other hands is not an easy task. So that was just enormously flattering that she felt that Laura and I and Jean were ready to take on that role. And we got to witness the firsthand the magic that happens in that classroom. People start out, Jody, and they're telling themselves the same stories we tell ourselves when we're trying something new. I can't do this. I'm no good. It's too hard. And then gradually, as day by day goes by in the sewing program, they go, "Oh, maybe I can do this." And, it certainly gives them a skill of sewing, but much, much more importantly, it gives them back to themselves. They realize they have dignity, they have value, they have capability. And for many of those people, they might have limited education and perhaps limited opportunities, and this just opens doors for them, and they can actually see that door, and that's when the magic happens. They Everything transforms.
I love that. Now, it's being a volunteer and being a boots to the ground volunteer where you've been overseas and doing different things, we have incredible volunteers who volunteer back home in Canada, or I even love to call donors volunteers because you're volunteering, your finance, but also your heart and your prayers and your support to the organization. What can you share with that group of volunteers about the impact that happens on the scene?
Oh my goodness. Without donors and their generosity, first of all, we wouldn't be able to get there.
Yeah.
But more importantly, to see somebody sit down at a sewing machine that they know is staying in their community, and to see them use tools that they might not have been familiar with before, and fabrics that are suitable for the task at hand instead of trying to make do with other things. All of those tools are what donors allow us to bring with us and to leave behind, so that those lessons can continue in our absence.
And it's
Couldn't do it without them.
quite fantastic. Like the whole thing, it's like it becomes a beautiful metaphor of sewing, right? Like all of it has to weave together, all of the threads
We
become
are all
the
stitched
finished
together.
product. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
with the amount of hours that you have done over your decade of being with Sewing Seeds, what has the impact been back onto you?
Uh, well, you never, I always say a volunteer reaches in, but the hands that reach out back to them are the ones that fill your heart. And the students that we've come in contact with, they're so memorable. They'll be with me for life. But on an absolutely personal level, Sewing Seeds gave me back my own love of sewing. When I became involved in the charity, I hadn't been behind a sewing machine for probably 30 plus years. And I was back in the same situation as any of our students going, oh no, this is too hard. I can't do this. And gradually, again, the curriculum that Sylvia has spent her lifetime developing takes a student, any student, from absolute beginner, never having operated a machine, to an accomplished tailor, seamstress, sewer. And that alchemy is incredible to witness.
I love that. I think it's very cool. I'm I'm hoping on behalf of the charity, you'd be for, another decade at least, but continuing to volunteer and share over that time and looking forward. Do you have a highlight or a favorite moment that pops into your mind from some of your past volunteering experiences?
Oh, so many of them, Jody. I couldn't begin to count. Um, every experience has been incredible. And we shouldn't make it sound like all we ever do is work. One of the amazing experiences in Guatemala is having the opportunity to go to the coffee shops, and they have amazing coffee in
Oh,
Guatemala. So
yeah.
a Guatemalan cappuccino can't be beat. And coming to Uganda, the opportunity, people in the community sharing with us their culture and their way of life. Incredible. The dancing, the singing, it is such an enriching experience on so many levels.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share some of your volunteer experience with us. I know I can say on behalf of Sowing Seeds, the whole team, we're so grateful for everything that you do to help support on so many levels the entire charity. And is there anything else you wanted to add before we go today?
Again, my gratitude for the organization, for the work they're doing out there in the world, and for the donors that make it possible. Gratitude.
Thanks, Heather.